Let's set up your rig like a pro race car driver. One of the very first videos we made on this YouTube channel was an ergonomics video, how to set up your rig like a pro driver. It did so well, yet there were so many missing pieces in that video. So we're gonna recreate that video and make the ultimate ergonomic setup guide for you guys to be driving in your sim rigs like a pro race car driver. Last time I shot this ergonomics video, I was lazy. I didn't pull the rig out. We kind of shot everything while the rig was in place, but we also have an excuse because I have a new toy in the office. I'm gonna be installing this kind of at the same time for another video. But this is gonna really help you guys see a profile shot of how everything's set up, and I'll try to give you as many angles as possible to get your rig as close to how I have mine set up. Of course, everyone's gonna be different because we're all different shapes and sizes. I'm vertically challenged, so I'll have mine set up a little bit differently than yours, but at least I can give you solutions so you can find out what the right angle is so you can avoid certain issues that you guys are facing. This side profile shot's a lot easier to see what we're doing in terms of seating position. So a lot of work, but definitely worth it compared to the first ergonomics video I made. The chassis itself is an ASR Pro. Now you can do this with any rig. It doesn't really matter what you have, as long as it's more or less a modular chassis like this. Extruded aluminum is really modular. You can move things around. You might need to be a little creative when you get to the seating position. So we'll start with the seat, we'll move to the pedals, and once we have those two pieces set, then we're gonna move over to the steering wheel and get everything lined up, and finally close it out with screen height and how you should be sitting in relation to that. The first choice you have to make is a reclining seat or a bucket seat. I think when you start going into more pro level equipment, a reclining seat may seem like a good option because you can adjust the angle of the back really easily with a lever. But my recommendation is always to go for a fixed bucket seat if you can. It just makes everything easier so you can get the right angle on the butt and leg portion of your seat and on the back area. So I have a fixed bucket seat, and I'm able to get a really nice angle on my legs that supports my legs when I'm braking and also supports my back and gives me good lumbar support. Now, all of that has to sit on the brackets. And with a reclining seat, you can't actually get side mounted brackets. So you need to bottom mount it, which is why I don't really recommend it. You always have too flat of a bottom, and you tend to slip and slide when you hit the brakes, so your butt actually slides back and forth. You don't have the support and you're not locked in place. So the brackets, really important actually, because that's gonna allow you to get the right angle for the entire seat setup. People like ASR, Advanced Sim Racing, or many other companies will have seat brackets like this that you can pick from. And ultimately what you're looking for is a seat bracket that's gonna give you enough variation or difference between the front hole and the back hole that's gonna allow the seat to be tilted the right amount. You're always looking for the right compromise between the butt portion of your seat being tilted up and the back portion being tilted backwards. So some seats may not allow that because of the actual construction of the seat itself. That's why it's very important to go for a little bit more of a higher end seat. Because again, like I said, you're sitting in that thing all the time, and it's a good investment to spend a few extra $100 if you guys can afford it to really invest in good equipment that's gonna last you a long time. You know what they say, buy once, cry once. So let's talk about numbers now. How I have my seat tilted and why I have it tilted in this specific way. The app I'm using to get the right angles and measurements, it's on my iPhone. It's called Measure. It's a native app to iPhone. All you have to do is open it and level it with the ground. You're on your way. So I have a pretty severe tilt on my seat, and there's a very good reason for that. Naturally, when you're driving, if you have everything set up correctly, you should feel no strain or any resistance. You don't want to be reaching for anything. You just want to be nice and relaxed. So that comes down to pushing pedals, turning the steering wheel. So when I'm sitting in the seat, I actually go for a very specific angle, and I do this in the real race car as well when we make our custom molded seats. I really like not too aggressive of a slope on my butt portion into my thighs, but I need enough just so I can get the angle in my body where I'm more or less at 90 degrees, my body to my legs. I'm trying to look for a 90-degree bend in my body. And you can get this in many different ways by sitting more vertical or straight up with your back. But the reason I tilt back is because there's a few things that will impact your back. One of those things is how aggressively sloped the thigh portion or the butt portion of your seat is. So I slope it down on about a 32 to 34 degree angle, and that's gonna give me enough tilt on the bottom into my back where it's gonna give me the support I need in my lumbar area, where when I'm braking, I'm not arching my back. I wanna be pressing my lower back into the seat without any sort of pocket forming where my back opens up and arches, because any sort of movement in your lower back is gonna create strain. Now, another thing you can do is put a lumbar cushion in your seat. Sometimes you can remove the padding from your seat and actually stuff some memory foam inside, and that also will really help fill the gap. But just to avoid that, I have my seat on a little bit of a slope, so when I do press the brake, I don't actually arch my back. So bottom part of the seat is around 32 to 34 degrees, sloped upwards. And on the lumbar portion of my seat, it's around 50 degrees, tilted backwards. And as it goes up to my mid-back, it's around 45 degrees. So that's more or less the angle you're looking for. And again, everyone's seat's gonna be a little bit different, so don't get fixated on the actual measurement itself. You just need to find something that's comfortable for you. Ultimately, what you're looking for in the seat angle is to limit how much arching you have in your lower back. And the further back you go, the less you're going to arch. The straighter up you are, the more it's going to tend to arch your back, and you're gonna have lower back pain. The next piece of the puzzle is getting your pedals set up. So once you have your seat set, everything else is going to fall into place off of your seat. Now, it may not be the exact same as how I have mine set up, but I'll tell you how to get your pedals set perfectly for your setup at home. So everyone in the last video was fixated on pedal height based off of the ground and all different measurements that have absolutely no connection whatsoever to getting the right pedal set up. What we're looking for here is a few things. You don't want the pedals to be so far away to the point where you're reaching for them that you're actually straining your calf. You also don't want your pedals so close that you're putting a lot of pressure on your shin. That's gonna cause shin splints. So you really want a nice, comfortable pedal distance. When you're fully pressing down the throttle, you have just a nice relaxed position here, because remember, you're setting yourself up for when you're on full power, because you're gonna be on full throttle most of the time, right? That's how we go fast. You don't want to be reaching. That's gonna cause excessive strain. And on the other side of that, if the pedal's too close when you're off throttle, you may be resting your foot on power and giving an involuntary throttle input. You may have 10% throttle on without even knowing. So super important to have the throttle set up in the right position, and it doesn't need to be exactly flush with the brake pedal. You can adjust everything a little bit differently depending on what your pedal setup is. You can go down and use some tools to change the mechanical angle or distance of how your pedals are set up individually for most pedals, of course. Now, on the brake side, this is one of the more important pedals to set up because you're putting a lot more force into it, and this is where you can cause injury to your body. So distance-wise, I have mine a little bit closer than my throttle because I like to rest my foot on the brake, and I don't have any issues with having shin splints because I actually don't rest my brake foot against the pedal or the heel stop. I have mine a little bit further back, and the reason for that is because I try not to pivot my ankle when I'm braking. I actually use my big muscle group, and I like to press the pedal down when I give that initial press and slide my heel into the pedal stop. And once I hit my peak pressure, that's when I usually just try to use the heel stop as a pivot point and bleed the pressure off. So it's a little bit of a different braking style. Maybe you use the same, maybe you use something different, but that's how I like to have mine set up. So I actually have my brake pedal a little bit offset and closer towards me. So don't be afraid to have a little bit of an offset. Now, alignment, you want to try to have your pedals as straight on as possible with your hips. The further offset you are, the more strain you're going to cause, because when you're putting a lot of force into the pedal, there's going to be pressure on your knee, and you may have actually some knee issues laterally. So you want to try to avoid that. For any of you that have knee issues and you feel like you have a lot of pain in your knee on the sides, it's because your pedal's probably not aligned properly, and when you're pressing the brake, it's going out of alignment. So really important to have everything set up. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of that because you may be in a car where the pedals are fixed, but I would try to align my seat and my body to the pedals, no matter what. I always try to align everything to the pedals, and this way it's going to minimize the knee pain laterally. Now, I've heard some people have knee pain on the front or back side, and that could just be because you're reaching too far and you're either too constrained where the pedal's too close to you, or it's too far away, just like the throttle, and you're having to reach for it, and it's causing some knee pain on the front side. So make sure that you're not using your knee as much as your quad. Everything should be set up here for the big peak pressure coming from your quad muscle, your biggest muscle group on your body. That's going to help minimize the knee pain, which is a huge talking point in the sim racing community. So we have our pedal distance, our pedal alignment in relation to our hips, so we don't have any knee issues. Now, the most important part, and I didn't talk about this last time, two things: the pedal height and the pedal angle. The angle is one of the most important things, and like a really crazy hack that I found out. I actually found out by accident because I had it set up initially on my previous rig, but on my newest rig, it was a little bit off. It took me forever to fix it, but the angle is hugely important. First of all, the pedal height. Everyone's so fixated on the pedal height. Now, the height actually is dependent on your seat. So it could be a little higher or a little lower than mine. My pedals are actually flush with the bottom of my butt. So my heels are in line with my butt, the way I have my seat set up. Ultimately, what you're looking for is the right alignment from your body, starting from up here, 90 degrees to your hips, your legs going basically having a 90-degree angle. And essentially what you're looking for is, and I'll tell you how to find this because I paid attention in math class, you want to find the right angle with your legs in relation to the pedals. So I'm actually looking for 130 degrees of an angle behind my knee. And that's going to give me the proper setup here. So you may need to go a little higher, a little lower in order to get that. But I have 130 degrees, and the way you find that out is you take the angle of your thigh, the angle of your shin, and you add that together. You take 180 degrees or 180, and you take the number of the angle here, the angle on your shin, and you subtract it from 180, and you get the angle behind your leg. It's easy. You're looking for around 130 degrees. For me right now, I have about 127 degrees. So that's pretty much what I've arrived at, and it's so comfortable. I sit here really comfy, everything's beautiful. I'm really minimizing the amount of strain on my body, and when I push the throttle, it's just a really easy roll. Really easy roll onto the throttle. When I hit the brakes, I can use my big quad, my muscle groups, the largest muscle group on your body, to use all the power and smash the brake pedal down. This way you're not gonna get any strain. You're not gonna have any fatigue. You can do long races with no issues whatsoever. So pedal height, it's all dependent on the angle of your legs. So don't get fixated on how high or how low your pedals actually are. It's all about getting the right angle on your legs. If you're too far stretched out, then it's going to cause issues where you're not using proper muscle groups. You're going to be using smaller muscle groups, which is not good. You want to use the biggest muscle groups possible and reserve the smaller muscle groups for the little finesse movements that you're going to need on the pedal. Finally, the angle. Not enough people are talking about the angle of the pedal. I see some arrive at a conclusion that you need to invert your pedals. And pedal inversion is not the worst thing, but some cars have it, some cars don't. The reason why some people invert their pedals is because you're trying to avoid your heel coming off the pedal plate. Now, I had this issue for a little bit of time where I was just annoyed. I'm like, why is my heel coming off the heel plate? And it dawned on me that it's all about the pivot point of where the pedals are. So the pivot point of the pedal is dictating if your heel is coming off the heel plate or not. If your foot is going well past the pivot point, the top of your foot's going well past the pivot point, it's gonna cause you to reach and actually lift your heel up. So same thing happens with the brake. You don't really want the brake pedal going so far over the pivot point because it's gonna cause you to lift your heel up, and then you're gonna use your tippy toes, and it's gonna cause pain in your calf, and it's gonna turn into a mess. So the angle of the pedals itself is so crucial. I actually found that around a 12-degree angle with the back of the pedals pointing upwards is like the magic number for me. I used to have it at 6 degrees. My heels were coming off the heel plate, and I increased the back up to 12 degrees of a slope with, again, back part of my pedals pointing upward, and it really helped because now my foot's not going over and beyond the pivot point, of the pedal, and I'm keeping my heel locked on the heel plate. So it's just making my driving a lot more precise. I'm not focused on lifting my heel up and having my heel float all around. It's really stable and supported, and it helps me hit my marks on track. The final piece to get everything aligned properly is getting the right wheel position. So there's the wheel distance, angle, and the height. So we're gonna try to find those 3 pieces and complete our puzzle here. First thing you'll notice is these arms are really far away. That's one of the benefits for the ASR Pro. They have a sliding mounting bracket inside where I can actually move my wheel towards me or away from me. Super easy with just 2 twist offs, and I can slide everything. Depending on the wheel I use, I can get the perfect adjustment without having to unlock any nuts and bolts. Love that feature. I also use an extension that's from SimCore. The further away those arms can go, the better, I find, because it just helps getting in and out of the chassis, and there's just no obstruction, which is good. I don't like using a seat slider because I want everything fixed with as little movement as possible, so that's the first thing I've done. Everything is as far away as possible, but I want the wheel close to me. So how I get to the right distance is by simply just putting my shoulders in the back of the seat, putting my arms out over top of the wheel, and you're roughly looking for your wrist, or at least the wrist area, to be sitting over top of the rim. And what that's gonna do for you is when you're in the proper driving position, you're gonna have a nice relaxed 90-degree angle in your arm and your elbow. You're probably wondering, why do you want 90 degrees? Because you don't want to be stretching out. I see so many people online driving like this, straight arm. And what happens is when you start driving straight arm, number one, you're using the front of your shoulder way too much, and you're gonna tire yourself out, and you just lack the control. Because like I mentioned with the legs, you wanna use bigger muscle groups. You wanna use your biceps, your chest, your back. You wanna use bigger muscles to minimize the stress on those smaller muscles so you can really be finesse when you're driving. Now, if you're fully stretched out, the second thing that's gonna happen is when you make a turn, you're probably pulling your shoulder off the seat. You don't wanna do that, because then you start wobbling around and you don't have a lot of precision. You wanna try to be as fixed as possible with as little movement. Just like when you hit the brake pedal, you don't want your back to be arching. You don't want your shoulders coming off the seat. So really relaxed, 90 degrees. This is gonna help me use my bicep when I'm steering with my force feedback. SimuCube 2 Ultimate, a lot of force here. I'm using about 13 Newton meters of force, but it's still a lot, and I don't want to be stressing myself out by using the front of my shoulder. When I'm in the real car, I'm not driving like this. I had the wheel really close to me. As long as I don't have any obstructions with the side of my seat, then I'm bringing that wheel really, really tight. I wanna use my chest, like I said, and I wanna use bigger muscles. So distance-wise, pretty simple. Wrists over the top, 90 degree in the arm. That's more or less what you're looking for. Angle and height-wise, I like mine on around a 14 degree angle. That's very similar to the race car. I just find that the angle is important because it's gonna cause wrist issues. If you have not enough of an angle or too much of an angle, then your wrist is either straining the top or bottom when you're driving. So 14 degrees for me is perfect. So I like to get my distance, angle, and then I'll adjust height. So for me, I have my hand on the wheel, nice and loose. You can see that in my wrist, it's not really like that or kinked in any direction. It's very relaxed and very straight through my wrist. So when I'm driving, I'm able to just push up with my palm, and I don't have any sort of kinking in my wrist. It's not gonna cause any wrist issues. Again, I hear so many sim racers having wrist issues because force feedback motors are actually a lot more aggressive than real life steering wheels and steering systems, because you need more information through the wheel, because you don't have the seat of the pants feeling as much as you would have in real life. So a lot of wrist issues because of the bad alignment of your wrist on the steering wheel. So make sure that distance to the wheel is right, angle of the wheel is right, and then you just check everything with height. And what I'm looking for is top of my hand when it's on the wheel in line with the top of my shoulder. That's about the right height. If you're too low, you're gonna have an imbalance in your muscles. Again, using too much of the front of your shoulder if it's too low. If it's too high, then you're gonna cause strain and maybe be using a bit too much of your back when you're turning, right? So you can even think about it. If you sit there and just put your hands down low and start flexing and make the motion of turning, you're gonna be using too much of your chest, not enough of your back. And same thing up high. If you make that motion, you can feel your trap flexing. So you can do that to yourself. And when you're lining yourself up in your rig, you can really just do the experiment. Say, okay, when I'm turning, am I using too much of the front, too much of the back? You want to find the right balance. Just like your race cars, we're always chasing the right balance in the car. You need the right balance in your body as well. And you want to use all the muscles even. So we have distance, we have angle, we have height. All those things you should be looking for. Everyone's going to be a little bit different. The main thing is you're looking to minimize the pain and strain on your body. For me, this is about how I sit in my Mercedes AMG GT3. Love the seating position. Everything is here and I don't have to reach for it, which is the key. Alignment wise, I'm lined up with the pedals. There's no pain in my back when I push the brake pedal and feeling really comfortable when I sim race for long periods of time. So now that you have your seat, pedals, and wheel set up, the last thing you want to make sure of is your screen height in relation to your eyes. Just make sure you're nice and relaxed in the back of the seat. And a good rule of thumb is to have the screen sit exactly in the center of your eyes and how they track towards the screen. That's just going to help you set everything up properly, and it's going to give you the right proportion of information on the bottom part of the car and on the top part of the car. So it's going to help you look out the front and feel like you're sitting in the cockpit of a race car. So how did we do? Did we do a better job on this one? That's hopefully the ultimate guide, the last one you're ever going to need to watch in terms of how you set up your rig and the ergonomics. Let me know down below, has it improved your comfort? Has it improved your driving, your lap time? Have I missed anything this time? Please tell me I did not. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.